Here are the answers to the critical thinking practice questions for Chapter 22. For this set, we have just one scenario, the one about the local outbreak of E. coli 0157H7 and the conversation at the restaurant. So let's go ahead and launch in to the first one. Why steaks instead of hamburgers? With this one, it's all about surface area. What do I mean by surface area? That is, in any volume, the area that's on the outside. So let's take a look at a steak versus a hamburger. Steak is generally one piece of meat. Hamburger, on the other hand, is ground meat. So here we've got surface area that's very large, but no contact with the outside world on the inside of the steak. Whereas with the hamburger, not only do we have the large area on the outside of the patty, but also all of these little crevices that came from grinding the meat. If both of these were contaminated, the bacteria would just be on the surface of the steak. And even if you ordered it rare, the contact with the grill on the outside of the steak would probably be enough to kill all of the bacteria, or at least kill enough that it would be enough that your immune system could handle it. The hamburger, on the other hand, unless it's cooked all the way through, we have bacteria that's protected on the inside, and if there were E. coli on the inside, it could potentially make you sick. So that's why they always tell you to order your hamburgers well done. Next up, one of your friends acts disgusted and says she'll order a salad instead. Will this guarantee her safety, and why? So let's take a look at the answer options. No, because most salad dressings use beef fat as a base. Well, that's not true. In case you don't know what salad dressings are made of, beef fat is not one of them. No, because 0157H7 has been linked to fruits and vegetables as well as meat. Well, in this situation, yes, because the local outbreak has been linked to apple cider, and previously it had been linked to hamburgers. Let's see, yes, because fruits and vegetables are easier to degerm than meats and dairy. So you have to remember back to Chapter 9 when we talked about degerming. That's physical removal of the organisms from the surface of something. Well, with this one it depends. If we're talking a fruit like a cantaloupe has got all sorts of crevices, whereas, say, an egg, which is generally put into dairy, has a fairly smooth surface. So which one's going to be easier to clean? Yeah. But then you consider a watermelon versus, say, hamburger, and watermelon is going to be fairly easy to degerm, whereas hamburgers, as we talked about in the previous slide, are very hard to degerm. Besides, we generally don't wash meat. We try to keep things as clean as possible during the processing so that we don't have to degerm it. And then the last one, yes, because E. coli is only found in mammalian intestines. Well, the contents of mammalian intestines get all over the place. If it gets onto the hands of the workers picking fruits and vegetables, then E. coli is going to be showing up there. So I can eliminate A, I would eliminate C, and I would eliminate D. So I would go with B. Next up, how did the E. coli get into the apple cider? Now, anything that you put in the discussion board, as long as it's logical, would work for this answer. But let me explain the mechanics of picking apples. So here we've got our apple grove, we've got ripe apples in the trees, and we have what are called windfall. Those apples that have dropped by themselves to the ground. Well, pickers are instructed to never pick windfall. Makes sense, it's landed on the ground, and there's all sorts of animal droppings on the ground. So they're instructed to only pick apples that they pick from the tree. Well, at least with the E. coli outbreak that happened a few years ago from apple cider, it was from an organic orchard, which the only reason that plays into it is because they were keeping the weeds down, not with herbicides, but with letting cows come in and graze. Well, what do cows leave behind? Yeah, cow pies. And E. coli 0157H7 is generally found in cows. So even if the cow pie doesn't look like it's there, E. coli can survive on the surface of the ground. And what would happen is the workers wouldn't pick the windfall. They followed those instructions. But if they dropped an apple, it's not windfall. So they'd pick it up and put it into their basket. Well, it had come in contact with the E. coli. That's my knowledge of how E. coli could get into the apple cider. So, now that you know that, answering this would be a whole lot easier. So, what could have the cider manufacturers have done to prevent this outbreak? Well, the first one is filter the cider. Well, you probably don't know this, but filtered cider is called apple juice. So, if you filter it, it's not really cider anymore. So, you could have picked this one. This would be a good way to get rid of the E. coli, but then you don't have cider anymore. So, that's not going to happen. Instruct the apple pickers to not put dropped apples into their baskets. True. Institute strict hygiene among apple pickers. Also true. Pasteurize the cider. Now, this would also get rid of the E. coli. It's sensitive to heat. You can reduce the numbers. Unfortunately, so far as I know, they don't pasteurize cider. Personally, I stay away from apple cider. And then last, wash the apples before pressing. Also a very good idea. Of the answers that they would actually do in the cider industry, B would be correct, C would be correct, and E would be correct. For this next question, we're going back to the chapter on pathogenicity in microbes. So what is likely to cause E. coli 0157H7 to become more pathogenic than your gut E. coli, the E. coli that are helping you out? So let's take a look at these answer options with an eye toward what would make this particular strain of E. coli more pathogenic than what you've already got in your gut. Antibiotic resistance. Yes, that would make it more pathogenic, but only so far as that it's harder to treat. As far as organisms getting into your system, it's resistance to your immune system, not resistance to the medical profession trying to help your immune system. So I would say no to that one. Antigenic shift. Okay, antigenic shift is where this particular strain of E. coli has antigens that your immune system doesn't recognize. So you don't have antibodies against it. Whereas if you come in contact with your E. coli on a regular basis, which you probably do, you probably have antibodies against it. So if they get into your bloodstream, you can take care of them. So, yeah, that's a possibility. Capsule formation, that does make organisms more pathogenic by making it harder for phagocytes to phagocytize the bacterium. Endotoxin, well, E. coli does have endotoxin, also known as LPS, or lipopolysaccharide, but your gut E. coli are going to have the same LPS as E. coli 0157H7. So probably not. Exotoxins? Yes, definitely. If a strain produces enzymes or toxins that are released outside of the cell, that can make them more pathogenic. And just because I happen to know this, E. coli 0157H7 does produce an exotoxin that the E. coli in most human guts does not produce. So, to answer this question, the correct answers would be B, C, and E, with special emphasis on E because, like I said, I happen to know that's the correct answer. Okay, the next one is about your friend that says she almost didn't come to dinner because she was terrified of getting 0157H7 from eating out. What would you tell her to reassure her? So let's look at the answer options. Diseases caused by 0157H7 progress rapidly, so she won't suffer long before dying. That's not terribly reassuring. I stuck that in just to be funny. So, resist the urge to pick the joke answer. If she consumes only pasteurized beverages, order her meat well done, and check to make sure the restaurant is washing the produce well, she should be fine. That is true. And does it reassure? I would say that it does. Since she has E. coli in her intestines, she is immune to the 0157H7 strain. Well, considering the people who get sick from 0157H7, also called hemorrhagic E. coli, also have normal human E. coli in their intestines, that's not going to protect her. Remember that part about energetic shift. Since she is young and healthy, her immune system should fight off the infection. That's true. People who get hemorrhagic E. coli, usually, if they're young, adults, fairly healthy, they have a tendency to get better from it. But it's unpleasant. But they do. It's usually the young and the old that get more severe infection. So I would say the most reassuring things to tell her would be B, and then if you really have to follow up with something, D. That's it for this critical thinking practice, and it's the last critical thinking practice that you have to do for this semester, except for on the tests, of course. So if you have any questions, feel free to either email me, put your answers on the Ask the Instructor discussion board, come to my office hours. I am more than happy to help answer questions that you may have.